Hi, I'm Angified. I started Angified Presents.
We share the love of music.
It has been medicine and therapy, and nothing else worked.
It has saved many of us. With mental health, we need to open our eyes.
Hurt people hurt people.
We ask that you listen, comprehend, and relate with your ears.
Form that heart of unity and one.
We share on this stage.
Statistics, feelings.
And ourselves.
We stand with the belief to be you, to be heard, and to be original.
We all may be different, with opinions and beliefs.
At the end of the day, we are all brothers and sisters.
We are family.
We ask that you join us in a magical journey with artists from around the world. Open your minds, let in the love,
and listen with your hearts.
We all want a better tomorrow. Be one.
Communicate and look out for one another. And then, and only then, will you find the world.
We will find peace in all the world.
You'll find the world. And you will find in this shining world heroes among us and every boy and girl. Many have been broken, red hearts turn black. Love will melt the ice and turn it back, and you will find the world. You will find the world. You will find
even with a mobile device. We'll be talking about it all every Thursday night, from software to plugins and synths that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talkin IT. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. With the tutorials and tips on how much RAM. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking IT. We're talking IT. Every Thursday night on Angified.
Once again, on a Thursday, right here, with this guy, without this guy, and then with this guy.
Come on.
He's over there. Why is he over there?
I'm over here.
There he is. Nice. And then, whoosh. There you go. All right. All better. Happy Thursday.
Mixing and mastering is part of our jam tonight.
That's right. And another part is all about the layout and everything else.
Actually, it's a little bit of everything tonight because there's a couple of different things going on. And to start, we're going to go right to the cave and get to this first one because your windows might break soon. And there's a lot of different YouTube videos out there that say this, and a lot of times they're full of shit. But this one's a real one if you are dealing with the wrong windows and if you're using secure boot, which a lot of gamers nowadays are, and some people don't set up their computers. And if you're in this situation, you definitely want to know about it before the certificate expires on your Windows.
Yeah. And that's the thing a lot of people don't really think about a lot, but when did you buy the box? Has it been 2 years? Has it been 4 years? With a laptop, you really can only stretch so far. With a desktop, you really can, stretch along to 4, 6, 8 years. But then, by then, new operating system, new license, all that kind of stuff.
And right now with this whole Microsoft Windows 12 initiative that they're trying to change hardware specs, rules on how you log in. It feels like Microsoft is doing everything they can to either scare you into Windows 12 or force you in one way or another and using security as justification. And I don't like being forced into my operating systems. I willingly went to Windows 10. I really don't want to be forced into Windows 12 because if 11 is anything to show where it's going, I'm not impressed with 11.
Yeah, and part of the reason for not wanting to be forced into operating systems is we remember some bad operating systems. I mean, we have lived through some bad ones where imagine being forced to some of those. It's
Can you say Windows 8.1?
I can say several, but I'll allow them to remain anonymous for now. But they know who they are. They know what they did.
Well, and the grumpy sysadmin knows too, and that's why I trust this man with his advice here.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And another one that I trust, Andrew Wong, the Osmose. He showed us last year the synth that they'd come out with, and this is an MPE MIDI controller. Nice. You can wiggle the keys and slide and do shit that you just can't do with a regular keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they made a dedicated controller. It doesn't have the built-in synth, but it has all the control, and it's half the price. And for me, I'd rather get a controller. Got to see what Andrew says about this.
Yeah, I love what I see, like just in that section above each key there.
Yeah, yeah, you can wiggle these keys, and it does some cool things.
Put some wiggle on the waggle.
Yeah, and for our highlight video tonight, I was talking with the guitarist the other night about like this and the single coil versus the humbuckers, and why some go with one and some go with the other, and how they affect the guitar sound.
Exactly. And that's the thing is, in different setups, different types of guitars, sometimes you'll have a 5-way throw switch, like on a Stratocaster, where you'll have 5 different setups or 5 different choices. And even there, people will have those set up differently, where they'll have different configurations of pickups available for that. And we've seen some guitars that were modular, where you can slap different configurations in and out that have entirely swappable pickup sets. Well, live, just without even turning without unplugging even, you just pull them on out, slap the new ones in.
That ocean design, I love the idea of that.
It's awesome.
And this one's coming from I Love Guitars, so this channel's serious about guitars.
Exactly.
And then Pro Muso, not a freshie for us. This was another one I was talking the other night to someone about, like stage presence, and how the lead singer has that kind of tricky job of guiding the crowd and presenting the band. And Pro Muso is going to talk about how to do it like you've done it 1,000 gigs.
Yep. How you doing, Cincinnati? Make sure you're in Cincinnati if you say that.
Get your town right.
Yes. Be in the right town. That's definitely important.
Yeah. And then for our mixing and mastering, that's our jam. The Cosmic Academy is going to talk about the hidden psychology of mixes that sound good. Why certain mixes sound good, and there is some psychology to it.
Yep. It doesn't have to be psychotic. We're talking psychology.
Yeah. Well, volume does help us to visualize front sound and back sound, which is one of the psychology aspects.
Yeah. And that's where if you do the whole left right balance thing and you add some volume up and down, that can give you that extra bit of 3D action.
Or the feeling of motion, which in some songs you want that.
Exactly.
It's like with classical music when the flutes go
taking you on a little journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I like when they do that.
And sometimes the trombone takes you somewhere.
Yeah. Now, something I don't like what they do is what Microsoft is doing lately when it comes to their whole approach to this next version of Windows. And there's a lot out there who have been longtime Windows users like me, who are kind of at that crossroad right now. I'm not saying I'm ready to run over to the Mac OS because they're doing the same thing as far as the things I don't like.
And of the Linux distros you've worked with, have any of them been an adequate replacement for what you need?
For general purpose work kind of use, internet use, yes, but not for music. Music machines are not going to be moving to Linux anytime soon. But I will stick with Windows 10 as long as the software works in it. I'm not forcing myself to use an operating system I don't need to run the software that I'm going to use. And this is kind of important because if you are on these older Windows like this, and this whole idea of Windows 10 is not being updated anymore, security updates are not being, which is bullshit because there are going to be updates for it. There's still updates for Windows 7 in rare occasions.
And that's where they're important security updates. They will try to patch security updates like that, but they aren't actively trying to update things. That's kind of where that comes down. Like if an exploit shows up, they have to try to patch it, essentially.
They want you to move. And
they don't want to have to worry about it. So yeah.
In this case, this is about certificates. And if you have a PC that actually does use secure boot, there's a certificate that's tied to the Windows operating system that conveniently is about to expire as they're about to roll out Windows 10. I think it's more than a coincidence that like this is going to happen. But if you're on one of those machines that could have a certificate expire here, this is worse than a web page not loading because, oh, they forgot to pay for their certificate. This is your Windows thinking, I'm broken. I need to fix something. And it's that ugly blue screen that starts with Windows that says, I can repair this. You might not want to do that.
Right. And most people don't want to be in that position to make that decision anyway. Like most people just want their machine to work. I want to turn it on and be at the usual place I am when I turn it on, you know. And if it comes on and it has an error, they have to start fighting with it. And some people, they will go straight to a reinstall. Also, some people who are more technical, they'll just go right to a, okay, let me just reboot, you know, let me just not even reboot, restart, you know, do a reinstall and go fresh.
Or they'll go to a guy like this, and this is what makes a grumpy sysadmin. At the grumpy sysadmin has to deal with this kind of stuff when clients' machines start breaking all of a sudden. And in this case, it could be a whole office at once.
Yeah. And this is one of the things where, you know, the way you keep your storage also comes down to the number of drives you have in the machine and what you keep on each drive. And if you have a system drive that is literally just the system and everything else is on separate drives, you can get away with doing a reinstall a lot more easily than somebody who has everything on the one drive, doesn't think about where things are. Everything's just intermixed everywhere. And then when the machine has a problem and someone suggests reinstalling, you're going, but wait, all my pictures, all my this, all my that, which should be somewhere else, but aren't.
But you shouldn't have to do a reinstall. And in this case, if you do it with the same operating system, the same certificate's going to expire again, because it's being deprecated. And it has to do with the certificate for the BIOS security. That BIOS, if it's in that mode, is picky. Like it will say, hey, Windows, you're broken because this certificate does not match. And
exactly.
It's a little more complicated than people want their computers to be, but welcome to the modern Windows. This one's going to make me a little mad, Glenn.
No, not you. Get grumpy.
There's a certificate inside your Microsoft Windows PC right now, and it's expiring. And when it does, your system might not boot properly anymore. Not today, not tomorrow, but next time Windows updates something critical, and that's when it breaks. And here's the part that should bother you. Microsoft isn't putting this in your face. There's no big warning. No, hey, fix this now. Nothing. So before we go any further, if you want a simple checklist of the exact things you should be checking on your system right now, I've got that linked at the top of the description. Because this is one of those problems where being proactive is the difference between that was easy and why won't my PC boot anymore? Alright, here's what's actually going on. All this ties back to something called Secure Boot. Now I know that already sounds like something most people skip past, but this matters, so stay with me. Secure Boot is part of your system's firmware, BIOS or UEFI, and its job is simple. It decides what your computer is allowed to load when it starts. Think of it like a security guard at the front door. If something shows up and it's trusted, it gets in. If not, blocked. And how does it decide that? Certificates. And here's the issue. These certificates expire. Now the real issue. There's an older certificate in Windows called Windows UEFI CA 2011. And for over a decade, that's been quietly doing its job in the background. No issues, no noise, everything just worked. But now, Microsoft is moving away from it. They're replacing it with newer certificates, which sounds good until you realize something important. Your system has to actually receive and trust these updates. And if it doesn't, now you've got a mismatch. Let me show you how this actually plays out, because this is where people get burned. Your PC works fine today, no issues, no warnings. Everything is normal. Then one day, Windows installs an update, or your system tries to load a newer boot component, and Secure Boot checks it. And instead of saying, yeah, it's trusted, it says, nope, I don't recognize this. And just like that, black screen, boot error, recovery mode. And now you're sitting there thinking, what the hell just happened? And here's the part that drives me nuts. You didn't do anything wrong. This is not you breaking your system. This is your system slowly drifting out of alignment with what Microsoft expects. And this is exactly why I keep hammering on this stuff in my videos, because Microsoft does not surface these risks clearly. If you've ever had that moment where something breaks, you have no idea why, that's literally what my Windows Survival Guide and Repair Playbook are built for. They're not theory, they're not fluff. They're the exact checks and fixes I use when things go sideways. Links below if you want. Who this affects. Now let's talk about who's actually at risk here. Higher risk, older installs, systems that haven't been consistently updated, machines upgraded over time instead of clean installs, and offline systems. Also at risk, custom-built PCs, systems with modified secure boot setting, and skipped firmware updates. And honestly, a lot of you fall into this category, because if you're watching this channel, you're probably not the average click update and forget it user. And again, this doesn't break when the certificate expires. It breaks when something new relies on something old that wasn't updated properly. This is what makes this dangerous. The fix. Alright, so what do you actually do? Step 1. Force Windows updates. Don't assume, go and check. Settings, Windows update, and check. Install everything, reboot the machine, and check again. Yes, I said again, because Windows loves to stack updates. Step 2. Firmware and BIOS. Go to your manufacturer's site and check for updates there. This is where a lot of these secure boot updates actually come from. Step 3. Secure boot state. Make sure secure boot's enabled and it's using standard key, not custom or not half configured. Step 4. Let Windows update certificates. Modern updates push Secure Boot DBDBX updates. That's what brings in the newer trust chain. And look, if you don't want to remember all of this or second guess whether you've checked everything, that's exactly why I built the Windows Repair Toolkit and Survival Guide. It walks you through what to check, what to fix, and what to verify. So you're not sitting there later trying to recover a system that won't boot. Links right at the top of the description. Because once this turns into a boot problem, you're already behind. Why Microsoft is doing this. Now, to be fair, Microsoft isn't doing this to break your system. This is about security. Older certificates eventually become less safe. But here's the problem. Microsoft assumes your system is keeping up, and a lot of systems, so here's the reality. Your PC today, that's probably fine. Your PC after the next major update, that's where things can go wrong. And when it does, you deal with recovery environments, boot repairs, and potentially data access issues. So do yourself a favor. Take 10 minutes today and check this. Or if you want the shortcut to the entire process and just follow a proven checklist, grab the guide below. Fix it now before it becomes a problem you have to fix under pressure. If this helped you, hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And a huge thank you to all my channel members. You guys help keep this channel going. And as always, my friends, stay grumpy.
Stay grumpy, Tony.
I will. But that tool, definitely, I need to check that out. Nowadays, I prefer the easy checklist approach than, especially because there's like 5 or 6 of them here that I really need to go through that and make sure that none of that bullshit's going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, ideally, if you have too many machines in an environment and you start setting it up from a whole systems perspective where you're, trying to do updates from a server, pushing out kind of an arrangement rather than individually updating machines. But then a lot of the machines are going to be, mismatch as far as old hardware here, different card there, et cetera. So it's better to really just go in and sit with each machine and give it each one, the good look at.
I'm pretty good at doing some of the things he mentioned. When it comes to I reinstall every couple of years on any given machine, always getting BIOS updates, always doing it from the motherboard level first. And secure boot, thankfully, it's not something I really have needed to implement in a complicated way. These new games that are like tying their licenses to BIOS secure boot, I don't even want to play those games. But I know some people are gonna, and this kind of shit can bite you in the ass if you don't maintain your certificates.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where like even just the video cards for the gamers, like the NVIDIA updates. I mean, there's a lot of NVIDIA updates, and you don't need the newest every single time. But you know, if you're playing the newest games and you want to get the best performance, you'd be updating the drivers as they come available, and they do come available a lot. But once you get used to looking for updates that often, then you know it just kind of becomes second nature to be looking for updates elsewhere as well, if you're doing that kind of thing frequently. But for the people who just said auto update and forget, that's a different story, right?
Well, and it's not like I'm gonna run to MSI's website every week to go check and see if they're like, it's when you're setting up the machine and you make sure that you got everything up to date. The BIOS has actually been flashed up to date, because a lot of times if you don't do it over a couple of years, the hardware support isn't even there.
Yeah, and MSI is a good example. Like there is a TSR from MSI running right now on my machine that I can just bring that up and check for updates right there. So that's one place where they try to make that a little bit easier.
They
so you don't have to.
They do a good job of it. That's why I'm glad my brother's been like MSI all the way for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what he mentioned about like why Microsoft is doing this, and I don't think it's totally nefarious or anything like that, but there is this push right now for new security standards on machines and booting up. And one of the big problems with Windows 12 right now is the requirements require machines that are 2-3 years old. Machines that are older than that won't actually be compatible with Windows 12 because they don't support this new security model. And what Microsoft's doing here is saying, okay, we're done with the old model. We don't want to deal with it anymore. And you better get on board with the newer approach, because your old hardware is going to start complicating things here and there.
Yep. And to me, I always look at it as the new defense. How often does the new defense come about because of threats that already exist, rather than even potential threats? They're dealing with threats that exist in the environment and they're trying to react against them. Or are they proactively trying to move in a direction, where it's a new defense that is, blocking something that hasn't occurred yet?
Yeah. I think it's funny how on the computer side of things, getting people to like get new computers and keeping up with security over there is so different than on the mobile side, where you got people like buying a new phone every year, not even thinking about it. And the security seems to be like all taken care of on the back end. And it's all auto. And I don't know, maybe the computer side, really wants to become like the mobile side and just dictate and control your machine, because that's what they do with the mobile market. Unless you completely jailbreak your mobile device and disconnect it from the internet and run like a Linux on it, you're not in control of that phone.
Yeah. And one thing is like, no, I don't like the idea of having to buy a new phone every year, but like if you do keep on a relatively good upgrade schedule where you're staying, you're not letting your phone get 5-10 years old and, try to get that to limp along and do new apps, for example. If you're staying, relatively good with the updates, then, it doesn't even have a chance to get old and slow, essentially. So if you're getting that new phone every year, you're paying for the privilege of having a phone that responds like a brand new phone for essentially that whole year. Because by the time it's, even starting to slow down, you're already getting your next phone. So, and when upgrades come, you don't have to worry about as much because you've got the newest hardware. So when next year's software comes out, it's not going to, antiquate last year's hardware. It's going to antiquate 4 years ago hardware or 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people just saw a phone as like a specific device. So if you're paying this much a year for a phone, they weren't thinking of it like a computer, even though ironically with smartphones, it has become the new computer. And now they are upgrading not for the phone function, but for the computer function.
But at the same time, I do like the fact that it gets people less less attached to this particular device. Like it's your phone, but if you lose it, you break it, whatever, you know, you can get it replaced and everything is right there again because you're keeping all your stuff in the cloud, because all your apps come right down. You know, but if you're doing it right with your phone, right? And if you felt the same way about your PC, that would be great, because the less you actually have your stuff reliant on that actual box, and the more you can just say, oh, if this box stops working, I can just put a new one in and be ready to go because my stuff is stored here, there, and elsewhere, you know?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people, when their PC dies, it's like, oh my God, my entire business is on this.
Right.
With the phone in the early days, it was kind of like that. And if you did like, oh my God, my phone died, I dropped it in a toilet, all your contacts gone. Now, with the synchronizing going on, it doesn't matter which device you're on your account.
Right. And I think that's part of what they're trying to, like, you talk about how you hate how Microsoft has you know, forcing you to log into your Microsoft account. And I think that's kind of where
there
that was
are
going.
there are times on the computer side where you want that separation. And I don't want, I like that all my computers are synchronized on certain accounts. My Google, I can get to all my Google stuff no matter what machine I'm on. That's awesome. But when it comes to isolation, like the music machines, and when do they need to be actually working off the network, and when should they just be a recorder? You know, you want to have the option of separation. You don't want to be forced to, you can't log into this Windows unless you log in to the cloud.
But my thought was just that that's kind of where they were going with that, where in order to, you know, if you're always logged into the account, then they can always be pushing those synchronization things to your account. But as soon as you're logging in without that account, then you're not pushing those synchronization things. But then when your machine dies, you're going to expect them to be there and they're not there. So
I don't mind synchronizing like my Google account, which is through the browser, and it's one type of synchronizing. Synchronizing my Windows account that I log in. Yes, I'm a network admin, so the accounts that log in to any device in this network, I have a long time strategy of and what usernames for the file server, and so shares do their thing. I don't want to move that kind of administration to a cloud and a company. Even if I was a corporate company, I'd still want to have my own internal team, not having domain management being handled by the operating system maker.
Yeah.
I don't care who's making the operating system.
It also comes down to, at that point, with your setup there, like they're not all music machines, right? So like whichever ones are the music machines would be the ones that you would want to focus on. You know, they would have to have the Windows at this point, but other machines in the setup that are doing other functions could be replaced by things like a Linux box or even a Raspberry Pi, for example, in certain cases. So, you know, you could reduce dependence on Windows licenses, for example, if you wanted to, in certain areas of what you have in your setup there.
Yeah. Most of the house actually does everything in the cloud. It doesn't matter what operating system they're on.
Exactly.
My brother's the exception. He's a hardcore gamer.
Yeah, and that is a perfect reason to do things differently. Like again, with gamers, I mean, I've been a gamer for a long time. I've mostly built all my own machines. If nothing else, I'm always putting graphics cards in, or swapping out for another one. When we get there, got the RTX has been working very nicely since I got it, so it's been all good with that. But haven't really done a lot of the newer games recently. Like I haven't been doing a lot of games lately. I've been doing other things, but when I get back to doing more serious games, newer games that are more dependent on the hardware, it's good to have the RTX for that.
Yeah, I have 3 now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all 3 of them are better than the one that I have. So
yeah, it's funny. 3 years ago, I was like, I need one. And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom.
3 of them show up on your doorstep. Yeah, you gotta love that.
It's been a good 3 years.
Yeah.
That was good information at the Grumpy Sysadmin. I am gonna go check out his tools and make sure that everything here is in check there. And thank you for that information.
Absolutely. Remember, with 3 RTXs, you could set up like front view, right view, and left view in a game and be surrounded by 3 monitors to have that whole surround thing going for the serious driving or flight games or what have you.
That's what Rick has, the curves.
Oh,
2
yeah.
of them.
Love it. Love it.
And speaking of curving, a keyboard that has keys that actually curve. Andrew Wong. Yeah, and that's kind of what it does in a really cool way.
Nice.
But Andrew Wong, longtime fan, Andrew. God, it's been a couple of years now since the first time we went to him. And his hardware reviews are one of my favorite reasons to go there, especially the keyboard ones, because he's insane. And this particular one is the Osmose, which we watched his video on the original one that has the synth engine built in, and it's an MPE synthesizer. So it's got new ways of MIDI that allow you to express in ways that you couldn't do with traditional MIDI 2.0.
It saves you like 1 or 2 passes through, updating things note by note because you're getting all the information right there on the performance.
Yeah, it's got a lot more information. This MIDI covers a lot more ground, and it feels like I've got a whammy bar on the key, and sliding up and down depending on the patch can really do some wild stuff.
Nice. And that's the thing, is that it's just much more intuitive, I would say, when you get to that point. It seems like it would be. I haven't tried one, but it seems like once you get to that point where you can just, like you said, you want to get that sound of a finger wiggling, you can just wiggle the finger and it sounds like that. So it's reacting the way you would expect the sound to react.
Yeah, I used to do it on my old keyboards, but it didn't work.
So it just looks cool, but it doesn't make the sound work.
Yeah. Well, the thing I love the most about this is they cut the price in half because it's just a controller. I've got sounds. Just getting a controller is exactly what I want to buy.
And that looks like full 88, is that right?
This one might be the 76. Although, 1, 2, 3, 4,
even
5.
61.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, no. That's probably 61.
Yeah.
Because I got a lot more on that.
I just can't tell if we're looking at the edge of the keyboard there or if there's more still.
But I'd be happy with that. As far as like the essentials, you can transpose up or down a little bit.
And there's not if you're playing like really big classical pieces, sometimes you need to get lower or higher for a particular spot. But it's not a big enough thing to worry about for, general use.
If you set it up right on the key split, you can sometimes compensate there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm a fancy MIDI guy. And I need a fancy keyboard. Thank you, Andrew, for covering this one.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Andrew Huang. Expressive E have done what a lot of people have asked and made Osmose CE the controller edition of their flagship Osmose synthesizer. Some of you know I've been a fan of the original since it came out. They've cut the price almost in half to make a controller-only version that has a few tricks up its sleeve. It essentially has all the same features as the original, just not the built-in sounds. You can use it to control other MIDI instruments, whether hardware or software, including the new Control E plugin from Expressive E, which sounds amazing and is free for Osmose CE owners, and I'll show it to you in a bit. Thanks Expressive E for sponsoring this video. Let's take a look at the CE. As far as I can tell, it's the exact same key bed, and you get the same truly game-changing performance capabilities that the original Osmose introduced. You can move any key left or right to bend its pitch. You can set how much pitch bend you want. You can choose to set up pressure glide, meaning you can bend between two notes of any distance based on the amount of pressure you're applying to each note, so you have full control over that bend, as opposed to typical glide controls that set a fixed speed globally. Envelopes can be shaped by your playing velocity, so pressing softly, a note will fade in. Pressing harder, you'll get an instant attack, and within that there is a whole expressive range. Beyond that, there is a polyphonic aftertouch layer, where you can activate an additional dimension of expression by pressing into the key bed. You can also use a gesture called lift, where if you release a key quickly, it will produce an extra note, often with an interesting variation on the sound. But you can also lift gently to not have that extra note. So altogether, it brings a whole bunch of tactile and dynamic control to the keyboard paradigm in a way that feels more natural to play than anything else out there. And so it's just so much easier to add this nuanced expression to your playing. You can use it to control anything that accepts MIDI, though obviously MPE-enabled instruments are the ones that are going to be able to fully benefit from all of the Osmose gestures. One of the best things you can control with it, though, is Expressive E's new Control E plugin. Again, this comes free if you buy the Osmose CE, and it ships with over 900 presets that are optimized to use these expressive gestures. They're really easy to browse by different categories, including some of the optional gestures. Interestingly, in addition to Expressive E's sounds, they've also partnered with a great list of plugin companies. So within Control E, you can actually access presets for a whole bunch of fantastic synth plugins, whether you own them or not. The difference is if you own them, you can click up here on Edit Map and you get the full synth within the Control E plugin to edit as you like. For any that you don't own, the Edit Map won't be clickable, but you still get 8 macros to shape the sound pretty dramatically. By the way, Vital and Zyklop are free synths, so there's nothing to buy there. You can access their full interfaces within Control E. The controller also has some nice integrations with the plugin and with your DAW. At launch, they're supporting Cubase, Ableton, Bitwig, and Logic, but they're planning to add some more. If I go over to DAW control mode, I can browse presets on my currently selected instance of Control E. I can adjust the macros. And since there's only 4 knobs down here, I can click any of them to switch if I'm adjusting the top or bottom one. These tabs are the same as in the external MIDI mode. You can set your sensitivity, you can engage the arpeggiator or pressure glide, but then you've also got a bunch of DAW controls. So play and pause, stop, record arm, and I have my Ableton set to automatically start playing if I record arm. You can toggle the metronome on or off. Also, if you're on one of these other pages, then you can hold Shift, and it's basically like a momentary jump to this page, but what that means is you can go Shift, play, stop, record arm, and metronome, and not have to leave the tab that you're on if you want to stay there. You can turn your loop brace on and off, and you can move it around. If you hold the Shift button while adjusting that, it changes the endpoint of the loop. You can select what track you're on, and you'll be controlling the Control E plugin for whichever of these tracks you select, if you have multiple Control E plugins. You can even select other devices in your DAW and control their parameters from the Macros tab. You get volume and panning for each track. You can also mute it or solo it. I don't have any sends in my project, but the first 2 send amounts are controlled from here. There's even more stuff down here if you hold Shift, though I won't get into every single thing, and I also wonder if some of it might be like Ableton exclusive because scenes and clip launching. I might be wrong, but I don't think that's in Cubase and Logic. And then your preset and octave buttons also have shift functions. There's undo and redo. There is a tempo setting, so you can either use the knobs or you can use this button as tap tempo. And then shift and octave down is quantize, and that applies to any MIDI you have selective, but effectively, if you've just recorded something, that will be your current selection. So after you finish recording a thing, shift quantize will quantize what you just played. Though I guess if you're selecting clips in your DAW and then hitting Shift Quantize, it might still be a faster way to quantize than the usual way that you'd go about that. By the way, they've told me this stuff is coming to the synth version of the Osmose 2. Leave a comment. I'm interested to know what you think of the Osmose CE.
Oh, kick-ass review. Always kick-ass reviews from him. Exactly what I want to see. The one thing that I would have liked included is a drum pad. You know, like an Akai MPE level.
That would be nice. But even without that, it's still a lot of good stuff going on there.
Yeah. If the price got cut in half just to get the controller, I want the controller. The DAW control on top of it, that's bonus. I like not having to go move my mouse to start and stop things, but I want those keys.
I mean, I just love the expressiveness of each one, like being able to press down and give that little slide back and forth and all that. I mean, and for the aftertouch, to me, that's always going to be like saxophone, for example. I would be curious to see how the breathiness works with the aftertouch on a saxophone. And, you know, when you're in that aftertouch pushing down, then if you're doing back and forth, how much those interact, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Between breath instruments, pads, and those kind of like ambient sounds, depending on like how you release them, you know, this will get you writing in a different way.
For sure.
You've got a new way of expressing. You've got new types of sounds. You're going to come up with some new stuff.
And even if you were to just add new layers behind stuff you already did, you would find new depth in things that you had and, you know, give you new jumping off points for new stuff.
Yeah, I like when my instruments and controllers inspire me.
Absolutely. Just like with a new instrument, you get a new guitar and, you know, you start playing it and like just some chord that you hit or some piece of a melody just feels right on that instrument. And it just leads to something where, you know, my buddy, when he got a 12 string, it was like, as soon as he got it, he was just playing it in the store and he like wrote a song on the spot, bought the guitar on the spot, took it home. Cause that was, you know, that's how that works.
Yeah, I wrote a couple of songs in Guitar Center while I was trying out this keyboard.
Exactly.
So Andrew Hong, great channel for equipment reviews and musical tips, advice. He's dealing with deafness. He's dealing with a deafness, and he journals that on his channel and how he's adapted his music making to cover that situation.
Right. And everybody has different ways to cope with that, for sure.
Very impressive dude.
Yes, indeed.
Now for our feature tonight, we're going to add a video from the cloud here and find out the difference between...
If you have ever stood in a guitar shop reading a pickup spec sheet...
There it is. Hammer time. Find out the difference on a single coil versus humbuckers, which I'm not a guitarist. I don't really know, but I do know the difference in the sound when I hear it.
Yep. And I mean, there are a lot of guitarists who would say the same thing. You know, they understand, you know, they could recognize and they could tell you which one is which and point out which is which, but not a lot of people could tell you the exact difference of what they're doing.
Yeah, that first one they get might have whichever one they give to them. Eventually a guitarist will start to be like, I want this.
Exactly. And some change the controls where you can, you know, split the coils, for example, with, you know, one of the changes that you can make in a custom guitar setup.
Yeah. Why does one pickup cost $200 and one's like $50?
And wondered why one pickup costs $200 and looks identical to one that costs $40, you are not alone. The guitar pickup market is built on a stack of specifications that most players do not fully understand, and because of that, most players choose the wrong pickup for the music they actually play. DC resistance, magnet type, Alnico 2 versus Alnico 5 versus ceramic, vintage output, hot output, scatter wound coils, wax potted. The list of terms on a modern pickup package reads like a chemistry exam, and most of those specs do not mean what buyers assume they mean. Today we are going deep into what single coil and humbucker pickups actually are, what the specs tell you, what they do not tell you, and why most guitarists end up with the wrong pickups in their guitars. By the end, you will understand why a cheap single coil can sometimes smoke a boutique humbucker, and why output numbers almost never mean what the marketing says they mean. Let us start with what a pickup actually is. A guitar pickup is a remarkably simple device. It is a magnet, or a set of magnets, wrapped in thousands of turns of thin copper wire. When you pluck a string, the string vibrates through the magnetic field, and that motion induces a tiny electrical current in the copper coil. That current is the signal that travels down your cable, into your amp, and eventually out of a speaker as sound. That is it. That is the entire technology. Every single thing that makes pickups sound different from each other comes down to variations in 3 variables: the strength and type of the magnet, the number and geometry of the copper windings, and the physical placement of the pickup under the strings. Single coil pickups are the original design. Leo Fender used them in the first Telecasters in 1950 and the first Stratocasters in 1954, and the basic geometry has not changed much since. A Fender-style single coil is 6 pole pieces, usually made of Alnico alloy, surrounded by a bobbin wrapped in thin gauge copper wire. The whole assembly is small, the coil is narrow, and the pole pieces sit directly under each string. What this geometry produces is a pickup with clear, high-end response, a fast, transient attack when you pluck the string, and a certain articulate quality in chord voicings that humbuckers cannot fully replicate. The single coil has a window of tone that sits between 2,000 and 6,000 hertz that stays open and airy, which is why single coils cut through a mix so well on recordings. But the single coil has one serious flaw. Because it is a single coil of wire, it also acts as an antenna for electromagnetic interference. The 60-cycle hum you hear from a Stratocaster near a fluorescent light or near a computer monitor is the coil picking up the alternating current field from the electrical grid. The hum gets louder as you turn up the amp, and there is no way to fix it at the pickup level without redesigning the pickup entirely. Which brings
Which pickups do you have in your basses and guitars?
It depends which ones. See, like the Telecaster, like he mentions, the single coil. The SG has the two pickups in there. The Strat style. I was trying to see if I don't even have that one out at the moment, but I do have one pick guard here. This was basically from a guitar kit. So this is a, here, let me just do this for a second here.
Make you big.
Yeah. You know, this is basically just a faceplate of a guitar, and it has the pickups installed already.
And those are the single coils?
Yeah. Well, these you'd be able to just go ahead and wire up inside of the guitar, and you put them into any body that has, you know, that style going. It gives you the 5-way switch because it's got the 3 pickups.
And do you notice it pick up that electrical noise like what they were talking about there? More
not on when I play as much, but it's more I do hear that noise with certain players. Like one of my buddies is notorious for just having that hum coming out of a guitar all the time and just not noticing, and his amp is already very loud because he doesn't use any effects pretty much ever. So he's all about the tone from the fingers, the guitar, and the amp. And it's all about, you know, he's got a million guitars, he's got a million amps, old amps mostly. So it's all, you know, not the solid state stuff, but the old stuff, you know, the tubes. And just, you know, he gets the sound from the interaction of the guitar and all of that. But he must be sitting near a fluorescent light or whatever, because it does have that hum all the time. And most of the time, all you have to do to kill it is just put your hand over the strings in some cases. And like, because I'm just like, is that you? And if he just like puts his hand over the strings, it immediately cuts it. And I'm like, you got to mute that shit when you're not playing.
Well, and in the old days, what did the guitarists use, like a level pedal or an expression pedal to just like
A lot of times it's actually
turn it
even
down,
simpler.
or volume?
A lot of times it's even simpler. They go with the tuner because the tuner pedal automatically cuts off when you engage it. So you just put a tuner in line with the rest of your pedal setup. And then if you just engage the tuner, it literally mutes the channel so that there's no noise coming out, no signal coming from the guitar to the amp, but it goes into the tuner so that you can sit there and tune the guitar. And then, when you want to play again, you just engage that. And there have been gigs where they invite people up on stage, like a guitar player comes up on stage and he's playing through somebody else's, pedal board and everything else. And he's up there and he's trying the guitar, but he's just trying to turn it up with the volume knob and it's not coming on. And he can't see the pedal board, but there's 3 rows of pedals. So he's not sure. So I just came walking up from the side and I saw that the corner pedal is a tuner. So I just hit it for him and there he goes. And he's good. Yeah. But he was, trying to find the actual guitar player to find out, but the guitar player had already walked off to the bar because he had somebody else on stage playing guitar for that reason. So he could go walk away.
It's a good thing they got a Glenn.
Well, it's just one of those things where, if you're not familiar with it and you're just getting thrown into it, you would expect it to be active, but at the same time, someone's not going to hand you a guitar that's live because, you could be making all kinds of squawks while you're handing off.
Yeah,
so the idea is to mute it somehow. And usually it's either rolled off on the guitar itself or you engage that tuner pedal again to, with the tuner engaged, that automatically mutes the channel. And that's the easy swap. And then you kick back in.
Well,
a lot of times they use wireless also, these guys. So it would be a whole wireless pack swap and all that.
With these other pickups, do they actually solve some of this problem?
It's more, a lot of it comes down to the tone. You're asking about the other pickups as well. For the basses, they're usually, like my J bass, for example, is passive. And it has 2 bar pickups that don't look like this. Like this one that says Gibson, that's what my SG pickups look like. Those plates like that. So there's a plate in the one side, 2 plates like that for the 2 different pickups. Whereas the Stratocaster style has the 3 single coils like it had on this pick guard right here is the way I have that one set up. Some people will have humbuckers and single. They'll have HHS where it's humbucker single, or HSS where it's humbucker single. Like there's different configurations that you can put in. That's what those letters would mean. If you saw that in the configuration for a Strat, for example, they would have letters to tell you which one is which, whether it's a Seymour Duncan in this one, or, what brand you take of which.
And there's a lot of debate there when it comes to brand, just like with strings, guitars get devoted.
But as they mentioned, anybody could, the technology, anybody could literally go get the pieces to wind their own pickups and make their own, to make literally their own guitar from scratch by winding their own pickups and doing the whole thing. But it's a question of if you want to go through all that trouble and is it worth it, and would you hear the difference? And that's where I think the biggest difference comes down to the last thing that he mentioned, which was the distance from the strings. There is so much that is so important about how far you are away from the strings, and that so much of that goes into how well the pickups work, really. And how the tone works out with those pickups is so dependent on that distance that you really do need to get that right. And it doesn't mean look it up on a chart and, figure it out. That's a good place to start, but then listen to it. And
play it by ear.
You try it out and you say, oh, as I'm playing, I noticed that my B string is louder than the other strings, let's say, as an example. And you say, okay, well, maybe bring the B string up a little, or maybe bring the other strings down a little. And then you play the same thing through and see, until you get consistent, whether it's consistent volume or tone, or just making sure that things sound right to you when you're playing, the lines through it. And again, some of it comes down to the tone that you're looking for, whether it's through the amp and you're playing the amp at the right volume with the right settings, or if you're going through pedals and you have your whole tone crafting just coming through a couple of pedals, and whatever you're getting out, whatever speaker you plug in, you're going to sound like you and it's going to sound right.
Where's any noise coming from in all of that?
And avoiding noise is important as well. That's where sometimes you get that 60 cycle hum. Sometimes it's a question of, again, what's plugged in where. If somebody has a fan, blowing air on them, and it's plugged into the same circuit as their amplifier, you might get that, kind of a wah, 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 wah sound going on when their fan comes on.
The singer's not going to be able to look cool.
Oh, he can, but he should be on his own power circuit. That's the thing, is you should have some separation in what's going on stage. But it depends on where you're playing too. If you're in somebody's backyard or, playing on somebody's, back porch, there's only so many options, right? But if you're on a real stage with a bunch of different power, things on actual legitimate extra circuits, but you have to be careful because you don't want to cross circuits either. So you don't want to have, your amp plugged into one circuit and your microphone coming from another circuit, because then you could end up with problems. So it's things like a fan or the lights that would be on separate circuits for sure, so that they're not affecting directly the stuff that you're trying to use.
Yeah.
but there are a lot of considerations when it comes to power and a band and live microphones and live wires and amplifiers and all that good stuff.
Conditioning it like you guys have to do.
Yeah. And some of the, like I have the one bass that I have, the 5-string, is a J bass that has the 2 passive pickups. So there's no battery in the bass. One of the 5 strings that I got from my friend is the same exact style of bass, but it does have a battery. So it's active, but it's the same style pickups, but it'll just have a little bit more, like it would give a little bit more to an amplifier. Because it's active and a little bit different of a tone. So if I basically plug them both in at the same volume with the same settings, the active one would be a little bit louder and have a little more presence than the passive one would. But all I would have to do is just turn the volume up on the amp or the bass a little bit on the passive one, and I would get approximately the same. And I don't have to worry ever about it dying from not having a live battery in there, or from having a battery that I thought was good.
You're giving it a little hoops
just a little boost, just a little boost. Well, it's like when we go to the when I go to the open mics, like I would go to these open jams and there's a bass rig set up already with a full pedal board and, as I said, a tuner that's already engaged. So when you come up, you can unplug a bass, plug another bass in, and then you re-engage the tuner when you're ready. But the amp was always, because everybody was playing active basses, so the volume was set a certain way. But then when I go up and I start playing, not only am I playing a little more softly because I'm playing all finger style instead of with a pick, but we're also playing music that might not be as loud or as rowdy as some of the music that was being played earlier. Although sometimes we do play, we play Ozzy, so I mean, it depends on the night, it depends what the crowd looks like and what we're going to be playing. But I usually just end up turning up by 2 or 3 on the amp. If it was at 4, I'll bring it up to 7, whatever on the bass amp, just because for mine, I'm playing it passive, and I also bring it down a little on the bass, so I have some room to just turn it up on the bass if I need to. If I need a little more when I'm playing, because the guitar might get louder and I need to come up a little, and instead of having to turn around to the amp, I can just do it on the bass itself.
You are a little bit rowdy.
We are. and at 6'6", nobody stops me from being a little rowdy, but I have to keep it to just a little rowdy, because if I get a lot rowdy, people get really nervous. So we don't do that.
Well, let's see where these pickups go from here and see if we can get rowdy.
Which brings us to the Humbucker. In 1955, a Gibson engineer named Seth Lover figured out that if you took 2 single coil pickups, wound them in opposite directions, and wired them in series, the hum generated in both coils would be 180 degrees out of phase. The 2 hum signals would cancel each other out. The name Humbucker comes directly from that feature, since the pickup bucks the hum. But there was a side effect. When you combine 2 coils in series, the output of the pickup roughly doubles. The magnetic field covers a wider area of the string, which averages out some of the high-end detail, and the resulting tone is thick, warm, and rounder than a single coil. That side effect is what made the humbucker the defining sound of rock and roll. The original PAF humbuckers in late 1950s Gibson Les Pauls became the reference for what a rock guitar sounds like, and the whole industry has been chasing that tone ever since. So that is the basic split. Single coils are clear, articulate, and noisy. Humbuckers are thick, warm, and quiet. Now let us talk about what the specs actually mean, because this is where most players get lost. The most commonly advertised spec on a pickup is DC resistance, measured in kiloohms. A vintage output PAF humbucker might read 7.5 kiloohms. A modern high-output humbucker might read 15. A Stratocaster single coil usually reads around 6. Here is what DC resistance actually measures. It measures the total resistance of the copper wire in the coil. More wire means more resistance, and more resistance usually means more output. But DC resistance is not the same as output, and that is the single most common misunderstanding in pickup shopping. 2 pickups with the same DC resistance can have completely different outputs if they use different magnets, different wire gauges, or different coil geometries. A pickup with a strong ceramic magnet and fewer windings can have lower DC resistance than a pickup with a weak Alnico magnet and more windings, while still producing more output. The spec sheet tells you one variable. The tone is the result of all the variables combined. The real character driver in a pickup is the magnet. Alnico 2 is a weaker, softer magnet that produces a smoother, more vintage sound. Alnico 5 is stronger and more aggressive, producing a tighter low end and a more cutting high end. Ceramic magnets, often used in modern high-output humbuckers, produce the most aggressive top end and the fastest attack, which is why they became the standard in metal pickups in the 1980s and the 1990s. If you understand the magnet, you understand 90% of the tonal character of the pickup. The DC resistance tells you how hard the pickup drives the amp, but the magnet tells you what kind of sound is getting driven in the first place. Now let us talk about the output myth. Most players assume that if they play metal, they need a high output pickup. This is one of the most persistent misconceptions in the guitar world, and it is completely backward in modern recording. High output pickups compress the signal before it reaches the amp. The extra voltage hits the preamp stages harder, which produces more natural distortion, but also reduces dynamic range and clean headroom. This was useful in the 1980s when players wanted to push a Marshall amp into saturation without pedals, but it is actively counterproductive in modern high-gain recording. The players on most modern metal records, including the technical death metal guys, the gent guys, and the studio professionals, are running relatively low output pickups into high-gain amplifiers or digital modelers. The low output gives them note clarity, dynamic response, and the ability to let the amp do the distortion work. A pickup with too much output muddles fast riffing, kills palm mute articulation, and makes chord voicing sound blurred. So the guy who bought a 15 kilo-ohm EMG 81 for his metal guitar might actually get a better metal tone from a 7 kilo-ohm PAF-style humbucker running through the same amp. The modern metal rig is built on amp gain, not pickup gain, and that is information the pickup marketing almost never communicates. If you are finding this helpful, hit subscribe. We cover guitar gear and technique every week so you can play better and spend smarter. All right,
I did, Glenn.
let us talk about what you should actually be matching when you choose a pickup. The real question is not, what pickup do I want? The real question is, what does my playing style actually need from a pickup? Country players and funk players tend towards single coils because the clarity and attack help articulation in those styles. You can hear individual notes in a chicken-picking line. You can hear the slap of a funk strum. The single coil's top-end window is critical to those sounds. Rock players, jazz players, and most metal players tend toward humbuckers because the thicker mid-range and the lack of hum are more important than the high-end articulation. A jazz guitarist playing a clean hollow body through a tube amp needs the warmth that a humbucker provides. A rock player running gain needs the quiet operation. Indie, alternative, and a lot of modern pop guitarists have actually been moving back towards single coils over the last decade because the recording clarity cuts through dense productions in a way that humbuckers do not. The Stratocaster is having...
And that's an important point. If you're recording, that cleaner attack that you're getting there is much more useful as a clean signal that you can amplify after.
Absolutely. The other thing is, I mean, with for the people who say, how many guitars do you need, right? I mean, when I had just one guitar, like I said, just the SG, and it's the one that Angus had there, like that black SG, and it's beautiful, right? And it does exactly what it should. But the question is, if you're going to play multiple styles of music, it's good to have the multiple weapons in your arsenal. So having the SG is good for that. Having something that is a Strat style, which I have the Epiphone, that's a Strat style, and that was the first guitar that I had, the one that I had stripped it down and repainted it from primer, and then metallic blue flake after that, and it is a Strat style, so it has the triple pickup and the 5-way switch, so you get that with the single coils. And then the SG, we also have the a Flying V style, the Dean Dimebag I have over there. That's in, I haven't broken that out in quite some time, but having a few different options as far as, something that would be ideal for funk, as he said, something that would be ideal for rock, something that was good for just, quiet, mellow, ambient, whatever, something for metal. I mean, having the right weapon for each of those things is important, because then adding the effects, as you say, once you get the articulations and the playing down, getting the dressing up of the sound can be very easily accomplished with a lot of these tools.
Yeah. If you got the right one for recording, you'd need a nice clean signal that the attack that they're talking about there. That's where I see the advantage for that clean sound for certain genres.
Now you see the pickup configuration on this guitar that's on screen now, how it has the 2 single coils near the neck.
Yeah.
And then it has the fatter one right after that.
So it's got options.
This would be like HSS, a humbucker single coil in terms of how you describe it. Or I'm not sure whether they describe it that way or whether it's the other way, SSH, but I think it would be HSS because of the way we're looking at it here. Humbucker single.
I like it. I'm learning.
Yeah.
A quiet renaissance on modern records, and the spec sheet shoppers have mostly missed it. Coil tap and coil split options try to bridge the gap. A coil split takes a humbucker and lets you turn off one of the 2 coils, which gives you a single coil-like sound with a flip of a switch.
That's what Mike did.
The resulting tone is thinner than a true single coil, because the geometry of the humbucker bobbin is different, but it gets you in the ballpark for a rhythm part or a cleaner passage. Now let us talk about the mistake most guitarists make. The biggest mistake in pickup shopping is buying based on artist endorsements. Your favorite guitarist uses a specific pickup, so you buy that pickup and you assume the tone will follow. But the pickup is one of 20 variables in that artist's tone chain. The guitar body, the neck joint, the wood, the strings, the pick, the amp, the speaker cabinet, the microphone, the preamp, the console, and the mastering engineer all contribute. The pickup is maybe 5% of what you are hearing on the record. The second biggest mistake is assuming that genre dictates pickup choice. A metal guitarist who plays at home through a digital modeler has completely different pickup needs than a metal guitarist on a professional tour with a wall of Mesa cabinets. A bedroom blues player does not need the same pickups as a working blues touring musician playing through a loud Fender Twin on stage. The actual question you should be asking is, what specific problem am I trying to solve with this pickup change? Is my current pickup too muddy in high gain? Is it too bright on clean tones? Does it hum too much in my apartment? Is the output too low to drive my amp into breakup at reasonable volumes? If you cannot describe the problem in one sentence, you probably do not need a new pickup. And here is how to actually test pickup candidates before you buy. Find YouTube videos of the pickup installed in a guitar with construction similar to yours, played through an amp similar to yours, in a style similar to yours. Listen on good headphones or studio monitors, not laptop speakers. If you cannot find reference audio that matches your rig reasonably well, the pickup is likely too niche or too new to have reliable reviews, and you are gambling on a purchase. So the truth about pickups is simpler than the marketing makes it sound. Single coils are clear, articulate, and noisy. Humbuckers are thick, warm, and quiet. The magnet drives the tonal character. The output drives the amplifier interaction. And most players should worry less about direct current resistance and more about whether the pickup solves a specific problem in their rig. Pick the right tool for the job, and your tone will improve more than it would from any boutique pickup upgrade. Drop a comment and tell me what pickups you are running right now and whether you think they are the right choice for your playing style. And if you disagree with anything here, I want to hear that too.
Oh, I think I agree.
When he was talking about the coil split and the coil tap, that was some custom work that my buddy Mike had done to his SG. He has the red SG, and he had switched it so that he can do a push pull on one of the controls, and he had one of the volume controls taken out because he doesn't like the fact that on the SG it has the 2 volume controls and the 2 tone controls. So he had one of the volume controls taken out to just have one overall master volume, and then he is able to do the push pull on the other tone control, and he had a toggle switch put in to activate the single double coil. But I told him, when he's going to do the modifications, like, make sure you keep all the original parts, because eventually someday you will want, if you do want to put it back to the way it was when you bought it, you could always do that.
Yes, but I like the idea of one knob to rule them all.
Yeah, that's what he likes to, because otherwise, somebody reaches down, like you hand your guitar to somebody for them to play on stage. They fumble for, like, they try this volume, they try that volume, and all of a sudden it's different than the way you had it set before. And then you step back in and it's all, by having it just one control, it's either this loud or it's not. And then all of the tonal characteristics he was controlling from the tone knobs and from the pedal board. But he was also the one who modeled his whole pedal board rig after Trey Anastasia from Fish. So he had, his version of getting all the tone crafting from the pedals in the chain and using, this pedal for when you're doing solos or you need the boost, and you're using, he's got a volume pedal here and a drop tuning pedal there, and, all the different options in the chain there.
What did you think of his advice of not like following like endorsements when it comes to pickups? And
couldn't agree more. And that's what I was saying before.
Yeah.
About anybody like you and I could make pickups. We could make an afternoon, project session out of making pickups. It's a matter of, like he was saying, the magnets are a big part of it. So getting the right quality magnet, the right quality magnets for what you're trying to do, having the project in mind, what kind of pickups you're trying to build, for example, would be good to know as well. But again, and I would say even the Guitar Center thing is a good thing. Like, as far as knowing, if you don't know anything about what you want your style to be, take your hands and your style to Guitar Center and try an SG, try a Strat, try a Telecaster, because as you try each one, you try each of the different switch positions, and you try adding, full tone, medium tone, half tone, you try all these different options and try playing things in the style of things that you want to play through each of these guitars in different amp scenarios. That'll get you, it gives you a project for next time you go to Guitar Center. Even if it's only a song or two that you want to play, you can try it through all these different guitars and all these different amps to see the actual differences and how they affect through your sound with your fingers.
Yeah, I like his approach of asking the question, what problem am I trying to solve?
Absolutely.
Especially if you're talking like upgrading your guitar. Like, I have one, but it's not what I want. Identify what it is you're trying to do there before you make that decision. And this whole idea of boutique pickups, which is a big thing, I guess, the mentality that I want to sound like this guitarist, and therefore if I have the exact same guitar and the same initial setup, I'm going to sound like that guitarist. That's why his advice of like, don't get fooled by that. That's not how it works.
Yeah, it's not how it works. But at the same time, if you're a guitar player who wants to be a chameleon, let's say, and you want to be able to like shift in and out of a few different styles, like some of the guitar players that we work with, they're an AC/DC style band, but they play a wide variety.
You're either going to have to get his amps, or you're going to have to get an amp sim that simulates, that particular tone.
Well, the other thing
is that's where it's really coming from.
Because it's also not just one guitar. Like in this case, the guitarist I was talking about usually brings either 5 or 6 guitars to every gig. So he like has a whole, he gets them all tuned up and ready to go, and they're all lined up, but this song, it's this guitar, this song, it's that guitar. But again, some of it is for the songs where he needs to get a really good solid lead cutting through. He'll want to play the Les Paul probably. So he'll have that out there. So he gets that tone like he was, saying. And there's just different situations where he wants this guitar versus that guitar, and he knows which situations, and he does have the pedal configuration where he can chameleon in and out of different modes. So like when I'm playing when I'm playing Les Paul, I play in this mode, and when I play the Strat, I play in this mode, and when I play the Charvel, I play in this mode. So he's got his whole pedal configuration and coming through the amp that he uses. He's got everything set up the way he wants it to for those, 5 or 6 guitars to get all those songs for 2 sets worth of music across the board. Again, some is just rock stuff, some is heavier, some, all over the place. So he's got a bunch of different guitars to, the tools for the job, where the bass player just has one bass that he brings because, I've never seen him bring another bass because it's always that bass, but slight difference between bass and guitar players in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't usually see a bassist go up there with like 4 or 5 basses unless they're really hardcore.
It's also really not easy to break a string on a bass. Like, I mean, depending on your style of playing, I guess, if you're doing a lot of bends and a whole lot of slapping, or,
Well,
weakening the bass.
I could see some like fretless and for different songs, like if you're Tool or one of those bands where you need the different kinds of bass sounds, but one bass should be enough for most.
Yeah, I mean, there are basses that, the 5-string bass that I have, those strings have been on there for several years. And I mean, you should change strings more often than that, but bass strings seem to last for a very long time compared to guitar strings that will oxidize and, they won't be shiny very quickly after you start using them regularly.
That was at I Love Guitars, and maybe he's got an I Love Bass channel. See if there's a compliment there, but that's great guitar. When I was talking about the pickups the other night, I really had no idea the benefits or I don't see any disadvantages one or the other, but I do see with the single coil getting a certain kind of attack that could make me want that pickup more likely than
one thing is that for a lot of people who, if they're not happy with the way their pickups sound, they could probably get a lot different of a sound just by adjusting the pickup height. That's one thing that I would suggest that, not for a show, but we can just watch offline later, some video about a guitar setup that they dive specifically into pickup height. And it's important because it's not just when you're doing a setup, it's not just how high the string is at each fret. Like that's important so that there's enough play for the string to be able to vibrate fully through the range. And you also want it to be close enough that you're not changing the note substantially when you're depressing it from no note to on this fret. So you want it to be very close, but far enough away that you're not getting that rattling sound when you're playing. Yeah. And you're not getting that buzzing sound. So it's a fine line you're trying to walk to get the action just right, but that's to get the string action there. Then a whole separate thing is the actual pickup height from the string to the actual top of what you're seeing as the pickup there. And that's important because it's also on an angle. It's a whole bar that, is usually it's either high at this end or high at that end, and you can adjust the whole thing, but it's, you really want to make sure you've got a good eye at where everything is there, because that's where, as you're playing, you'll really hear the difference in the tone when you have the height proper.
I like a good buzz, but not in my guitar.
Correct. and that low B buzz is nasty. If you have a 5-string bass and you need a little bit of a truss rod adjustment, you might get that low B going. It starts chattering like metal teeth, chattering in the wintertime.
Winter's done.
Exactly.
Oh, speaking of chattering, our next one, how to talk to a crowd like you've done 1,000 gigs.
This is important.
That's the chatter. And we were chattering about that in the back. And that's what made me think, we've kind of perused this topic, but never gone in.
And that's the thing is there are, nobody likes silence on stage, right? If the whole band is up there and you're about to start a song, but all of a sudden the guitar player, he realized his wireless isn't working or something, right? Like that's where this becomes most obvious, because a band that doesn't have somebody in the band who can do this, or I would say have 2 people in the band who can do this.
Exactly.
One of them might be trying to do the adjustment on the thing. So while he's doing that, somebody should be able to just, even the most common one is just, thanks for coming, everybody. Don't forget to take care of your bartenders. Like just starting there. Like if you're at a bar, don't forget to take care of your bartenders. Like that's something that, shows respect for the house. It shows that you're involved. It shows you're helping out. And it's just something that you can always say that's always going to be valid, as long as there are bartenders there, but that's something that you can start with. Right. And then you just, some people would just start with a story about, how they, something that happened to them on the way down, but it can't sound like something that you just set up, and it can't sound like it's being tortured. It should be something that comes off as natural.
Be forced. It
should feel natural. Yes. So we'll see what they say, but for sure it is an important thing, and nobody likes the dead air on stage. And it comes up most when somebody has an issue on stage that they need to fix, even if it's just for 30 seconds. 30 seconds of dead stage time is is uncomfortable for the people on stage, and the people in the audience, they all start doing something else. Maybe some start getting rowdy. Some might start making heckling comments from the back, even on 30 seconds of downtime. But then again, some places they don't even notice that there's a band there. So, you know, it all depends on what kind of environment you've got for that. But
I call it 30 seconds of death.
30 seconds of death. That's good title.
So at pro_muso, not a freshie for us. We've been here before. And for this one, we're going to learn how to do it like we've done it 1,000 times. Only you could say you've done 1,000 gigs. Not necessarily yours, but you've been to.
We do lots and lots of gigs for sure. For other musicians.
Let's see if you've seen this in those gigs.
Most musicians walk on stage with a set list, a spare cable, and a plan for their talking that lives entirely in the vague category of, I'll just see how it feels, which is also how Trevor ended up assembling a trampoline in the dark. Most musicians land in one or two places. They say nothing or they talk constantly. And in both cases, they're completely convinced they've read the room correctly. Well, they haven't. I've done over 4,000 gigs, pubs, weddings, corporate events, and at least one backyard party where the stage was a wooden pallet someone had found earlier that day and felt good about it. Come on! I've watched rooms lock in and rooms fall apart, and I can tell you that talking is almost always involved. So here's what actually works, what doesn't, and why the difference between holding a room and losing it is usually not the song. Stop sounding like stage you. Most musicians don't sound natural on stage. They sound like someone doing an impression of a guy on stage. Slightly louder, slightly more on, like they've become a low-budget radio host the second the song ends. You can hear it instantly. The voice lifts, the tone changes. And there's this artificial confidence that wasn't there 2 seconds ago when they were actually singing. The audience hears this immediately because 2 seconds ago you were singing something genuine and now you sound like you're about to introduce a raffle. It's the vocal equivalent of someone finishing a serious conversation and then doing finger guns. The room doesn't know how to respond to that shift, so it doesn't. It just feels cheesy and a little cringe. I've seen many experienced performers do this. The fix is not to manufacture a more convincing version of confidence, it's to stop manufacturing anything. You know, if someone walked up to you between songs and said, "What's next, mate?" You know, you just tell them in the same voice you'd use to order a coffee, you know. That one, use that one. Banter is essential if it's built properly. You'll hear people say, don't try to be funny, don't do banter. I don't agree with that at all. Anyone who tells you to avoid banter has either never had it work properly or so afraid of doing it wrong they've decided that the solution is to never try. That's not a strategy, that's retirement. Banter works, it resets the room, builds connection, makes people feel like they're actually at a gig and not background noise for their own conversation. But it only works if it's prepared. The problem isn't banter, the problem is unprepared banter. Musicians walking into a gig thinking they'll just wing it and somehow be naturally funny in the moment. That's like deciding at 11 p.m. that now's the time to attempt a backflip. No warm-up, no real plan, just pure belief that it's going to work, and then there's a folding chair involved and someone asking if you're all right. Banter that works sounds effortless because it's been done enough times that it actually is. The irony of prepared spontaneity is that it's the only kind that sounds spontaneous. That doesn't mean genuine spontaneity doesn't exist. Some people have it naturally, and if you've got the gift of the gab, good for you. I didn't. But what I found is that having prepared lines gives you a foundation to work from. And over time, your brain starts operating in that lane even when you're not thinking about it. You finish a song and you're already scanning, right? Something at table 3, something someone's wearing, something that happened 10 minutes ago that the room hasn't forgotten yet. The prepared lines don't replace the spontaneous ones. They create the conditions for them. Like this video if you've ever said something between songs and watched 2 women at table 2 have an entire conversation with their eyebrows. Subscribe if you're ready to give those eyebrows nothing to work with. Talking to the crowd is not what you think it is. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Talking to an audience is not a performance within the performance. It's not the bit where you show them you're also funny and likable and a real human being who has thoughts. It's a tool. And like most tools, it works brilliantly when used correctly and causes immediate visible damage when it doesn't. What you're actually doing between songs is managing where the room's attention goes. That's it. The banter, the line, the song intro, the silence, all of it is in service of keeping the room pointed at you rather than pointing at the 17 other conversations that are ready to start the second you give them an opening. Sometimes a well-placed joke pulls a drifting room back in. Sometimes getting straight in the next song before the energy has a chance to settle is the right call. And sometimes the best thing you can possibly say is nothing, because the room's already where you need it to be. And speaking would only interrupt that. The musicians who genuinely understand this stop asking, what should I say here? And start asking, what does the room need? What does it need now? Which sounds like a subtle distinction until you're standing on stage watching half the room drift and you reach for a line and realise you grabbed the wrong tool entirely. If you've ever had a heckler in the crowd say something and your comeback arrived about 45 minutes later in the car ride on the way home, I have some pre-prepared verbal depth charges here in my video on witty comebacks and one-liners. Go and steal some. How to talk without killing the momentum. Momentum in a live room is invisible until it's gone. And then it's very obvious and fairly expensive to recover. One moment there's an energy building, songs connecting, people nodding along and generally behaving like they're at a gig. And then someone explains that this next song is tuned down half a step and a woman at table 3 is now peeling the wax off a candle and now it's just a room full of people at separate tables again. Getting it back costs you. Usually 2 or 3 songs minimum. Sometimes more. Occasionally the whole night if you caught it at the wrong moment. The issue isn't talking, it's about reading what the room is doing at that exact second. Every time you open your mouth between songs, you're making a decision to interrupt whatever is currently happening in the room at that time and replace it with something else. And if that doesn't land, it's like a holiday finally relaxing into itself on day 3 and someone finding a lump. How to sound confident when the room feels off. The worst thing you can do when the room feels off is let them hear that you feel it. Because the second your tone changes, the second there's even a hint of hesitation in your voice, the room picks up on it instantly. It's not even what you say, it's how you say it. Now, you can say something completely ordinary in a steady tone and it holds. And say something decent with a slight wobble and suddenly everything feels uncertain. Confidence on stage isn't about forcing energy, it's about sounding like everything is exactly where it's meant to be, even when it's not. It's like confidently walking into the wrong toilet, clocking it immediately and walking back out. Freeze in the doorway and there's a witness situation. Keep the same pace going in and coming out, and for about 2 seconds, 2 women walking in are no longer completely certain where they are. Same idea. You speak as if the room is with you. You don't check, you don't chase, you don't pause halfway through the sentence, waiting to see if it's landing. You deliver it, let it sit, and move on. Developing your stage voice. The single fastest way to develop confidence in how you talk on stage is to stop treating it as a separate skill and start treating it as part of the performance you're already rehearsing. Record yourself, not the music, the talking, because what you hear in your head between songs and what's actually coming out of the PA are 2 genuinely different things. And most musicians never close that gap because they never listen back. The first time you hear yourself back, you'll notice things immediately. The pause was too long, the line that ran out of energy before it finished, the sentence that sounded confident in your head and arrived slightly apologetic. You can't fix what you can't hear. Once you start listening back, the adjustments happen faster than you'd expect because the problems are usually obvious and the solutions are usually simple. Shorter, steadier, done. And don't measure your progress on 1 or 2 gigs, right? 1 flat night proves nothing. Neither does 1 great one. The improvement is in the pattern over time. And if you're paying attention and putting the reps in, the pattern moves in one direction. Right, off you go. You've got eyebrows to silence. Hey, YouTube reckons you'll like this one next. It knows things, uncomfortable amounts of things. Just click it.
It knows uncomfortable amounts of things.
Hey, YouTube, look at my eyebrows. What am I saying? But that was some real world advice. Good confidence booster too. Like for those who aren't confident going on stage and being in this situation, I think that's numero uno. Hammer on the nail there is get confident. Otherwise, you're going to do all the things he said not to do.
Now, a couple I wanted to mention. One was the in that situation with somebody who has got 5 guitars on stage, right? He's going to be taking a minute to switch guitars between songs. Like not every song necessarily, but anytime he's going to switch, there's going to be a few moments, right? So rather than letting dead air happen, like be reading the room at the time. One thing that you can always talk about is the song that you just played or the song that you're about to play. You know, the band, the song, you know, something about either one. You know, you don't need to turn it into trivia night where every single song turns into a whole demonstration or a whole, you know, speech about it. But anytime that you have to cover some time, there are things that you can just talk about that are real, that you can, you know, deliver in a confident manner that, you know, don't sound like you had to pull it on the spot, you know.
Well, his
Out
example,
somebody's shirt or whatever.
his example of banter.
Yep.
I've seen some bands that, like Poison's a good example. Like the bassist, the guitarist would all like banter off of the singer, and you know, it was kind of like a party at that point on the stage.
Right. And also some bands will just be on stage playing music and other bands will be up there doing a performance where, you know, they're getting really into it and they're, you know, they've got, you know, a fan blowing their hair back and, you know, they've got pyrotechnics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's crazy stuff even in small gigs. You know, they'll have pyrotechnics that are the kind that are cool sparks so they can like put their hands in this, you know, big shower of sparks, but it's totally fine. So like there's all kinds of things they can do in addition to, you know, playing music to get the crowd involved, the light show, fireworks, all that kind of stuff. But it does come down to keeping a pace and not allowing everything to just kind of train wreck. And if something does all stop because somebody has to adjust something, you know, some bands, like they'll just make it a point, like the lead singer will just start picking on the person who is having a problem, like, oh, you know, the guitar players, you know, in a joking way, not picking on him in a mean way, but you know, the guitar player, oh, you're having a problem with the string again, you know, or whatever. You know, it can be something like that, but you don't want to get
don't make them insecure.
Don't be mean about it, right? But and a lot of times they make fun of themselves, you know, as a band. They just say, oh, you know, the last time this happened, whatever, you know. And again, you don't have to try to be funny, do what comes naturally, but the main thing is to be real about it, you know, just but understand and recognize what the room needs. Sometimes doing nothing is fine, but don't just leave silence hanging for too long, because then they don't know if the band is on break. Should they leave the dance floor? I mean, that's important about set list also. Going from song to song to song, knowing where the person needs a minute to change guitars, knowing when you want to flow right from here to here to here to keep the people on the dance floor if they are dancing. Same kind of stuff.
Yeah, or your Ozzy, let me see your hands.
And the people who should never be off the dance floor, if they're by Ozzy, they should be there the whole time.
Ozzy made me dance.
Yes, indeed.
At pro_muso, again, real world advice there. Like that's good advice for a band looking to improve their live performance, and it does kind of start with the front man, which is usually the singer.
It also comes around to a lot of times when we're setting up for bands, let's say, you know, we'll ask the band how many pieces there are in the band, and oh, there's 5 pieces. Okay, how many microphones do we need as far as who's singing, right? And they'll say, oh, there's only 2. So we'll set up 2 microphones. So now you've only got 2 people who are going to be doing any banter, because anybody who doesn't have a microphone, you know, if they're going to do any banter, they're going to have to come over here to a microphone that's on to have anybody hear them, right? So depending on how many mics you have live will also affect how many people will be doing stage banter.
Well, and the key to that banter is improvising. And yes, a sense of humor helps a lot there. Banter tends to be better when it's funny, and the band members who can improvise there, not just with the music, but with the banter, will keep the show going.
Exactly. Just don't try to force it is the other thing, you know, be natural.
Yeah. So for our last video, we're going to get into some psychology. The Cosmic Academy, another one that we've been to in the past, is going to cover our mixing portion of tonight. And this is at the Cosmic Academy. And this one, he's going to talk about the hidden psychology of mixes that sound good. Why good mixes sound good. And there's a little bit of psyche to this.
Let's see.
We're going to use our brains.
All right.
Your brain is lying to you every time you mix. Not because you're bad at this, but because your brain doesn't hear things equally. It's constantly deciding what to focus on, what to ignore. And if you don't know how to use this to your advantage, your mix is in trouble. A researcher named Albert Bregman spent years studying how the brain processes sound. And what he found is that your brain is automatically splitting everything it hears into these two categories, foreground and background. And he called it auditory scene analysis. Your listener's brain is doing this every single time they press play on your track. So the question is, are you designing for it? Or are you just hoping it works out this way? Your brain uses volume as its primary cue for deciding what is foreground, what is background. So louder is upfront, foreground, and things we hear as quieter are going to be background, supporting. And that's not an opinion, that's literally how your auditory system is wired. Let me show you this example and tell me, what's the focus of this? Notice that had no focus. Everything was generally the same volume, so your brain had nowhere to go. Now watch what happens when I make this one clear decision. I just controlled where your brain went and you had no say in that. You locked right onto my vocal. Now watch this. Same mix, but I moved your focus to a different element. Now I have the lead as the primary driver of the song. That's what volume does when you use it with intention. So before you touch any plugin, I want you to ask yourself this question. What is the focal point of this section? What do I want my listener focused on right now? Because if you can't realistically answer that, your volume decisions in the mix are just going to be guesses. Now here's where things get interesting because volume is really just one part of the equation. Even if your levels are perfect, there's still something else that can be undermining everything you just did, and that's what we're going to talk about next. When you have two sounds sitting in the same frequency space, your ear has a very hard time separating them into distinct objects. And it doesn't really matter how careful you are with your faders, your ear kind of hears it as a blob of sound. And that blob has no foreground or background, it's just noise, kind of like this. Now you've probably heard the phrase, every sound needs its own space in the mix. And your first instinct was probably to reach for an EQ. But by the time you do that, it's often already too late. Because this isn't a mixing problem, it's a sound selection problem. Think about your main foreground elements, your kick, your bass, a lead, a vocal, maybe some drum tops. The producers who get this right are the ones that have already separated those sounds across the frequency spectrum before they start mixing. So this is just an example, but your kick and bass own the low end, then maybe my lead sits in like the low mids to the mids, my vocal is sitting in the upper mids to highs, and then I have my drums sitting on top of everything. Even when all of these elements are mixed relatively loud in the foreground, the ear can still separate them and focus on each one because they're not competing for the same frequency. You hear the difference, and notice I didn't open up an EQ to make things clear. That's sound selection. Now there's a third thing that ties all of this together, and this one might be the most overlooked of them all. Here's the one no one really talks about. Your drop can be massive. Kick, bass, lead, vocal, drums, everything hitting at once. And with what we just covered, intentional volume and frequency space, your drop is going to hit hard and feel massive. But here's the problem. If your track lives in its entirety at that same energy and intensity, the brain stops registering it. Nothing is going to feel big anymore. So here's where arrangement comes into play. Let's say I have my drop here. Now watch what happens when I transition into this middle section. This section feels completely different. Your brain just reset and I captured your focus and attention again. Just when you might have been getting used to the energy of the drop, the balance, the levels, things switch up. And even though this is only 3 elements, kick, bass, and vocal, it still feels enormous because of the space around it. And when we get back to the drop later in my arrangement, that too is still gonna feel massive because of the contrast. That's what the best producers are doing. They're not just thinking about what goes into this moment of my song, but they're also thinking about how that is relative to what comes before it and after it. Look, I know that even after watching this, putting it into practice is a different story. If watching a tutorial and it just working in your music every time was the case, like we'd all be making perfect music, right? You wouldn't be watching this video. So I get it. If this is something you'd rather do hands-on, this is literally the kind of stuff I work on every single day with the students at Cosmic. I will put a pinned comment below. You could apply using that. Come work with us. And if you found this helpful in any way, do me a favor, hit the like, subscribe if you're not. We actually make more videos, believe it or not. So with that said, I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, I will be checking Cosmic Academy.
The massive drop.
I like the idea of the psychology of sound like this, and especially at the engineering level and the instrumentation
Everything in its
level.
own space for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Because I've tried moving the space of sound, with panning and surround sound actually makes it real fun to do some interesting things. And volume, like he said, going in, we subconsciously perceive it that way.
We just did I went over to a friend's house on Wednesday, and we were basically bringing up one of the old recordings we did a couple of years ago with a drummer that was in our band at the time. And the tracks had gotten shifted around and nothing was labeled right and all that. So it was, when we first listened to it, it's like what is this again? And then,
Where the hell did we leave off?
and there was no drums at all. So they had gotten shifted down to channels that weren't even active at this point. So it was a question of, okay, I recognize that these needed to be moved up here. So like we managed to get everything back in order where it should be. Started listening back and I'm like, okay, now we have to actually get levels going. So volume wise, go through and just, anything that jumped out as too loud, start bringing down. Anything that came in as, anything I couldn't hear, I start bringing up. But for me, that's again, being able to focus the ear on a particular sound. Like I'll listen to the mix of what we're hearing and I can hear the bass and I'll just listen to it and see, is the bass too loud at any point? If not, it's a good spot. Go to the next, the next instrument that I'm thinking about. Once I got everything in a volume-wise balance back in order, because again, the track had been totally discombobulated at this point. Once I did all that, I just went back to this is on the board with the personas, and I just went to the loading on each channel, the presets. So like bass, I go tell it it's a bass on that channel, and it brings up an EQ profile, compressor setting, everything, like the whole channel strip for a bass. And it's not a place that you have to leave it, but it's a great place to start. And it sounds way better than.
Well, if you get in that habit, when you have to rebuild it, you kind of can rebuild it like that.
And that's exactly what I did. I went through and like on every channel, like this one is the bass. And then I would just solo the next one. Okay, that one's the kick drum. And, the next one, oh, that's the snare. Okay. And just on each one, I would just go through and, load that through. And then went through a second pass of the volumes again, because now by changing each of those EQ, sweeps, like the bass might have gotten a whole lot louder. And one of the, the hi-hat might have gotten a whole lot louder, for example, just because with a new EQ that we put on it. So you go back through and readjust the volume a second time. And all of a sudden the song doesn't sound twice as good. It's like adjusting the volume the first time got things kind of back to where you could recognize all the elements again. Then by redoing the EQ sweep and again having everything with those EQs puts everything into its own space in the same way he was just discussing about, the kick and the bass are down there doing their thing,
I think once you establish where the sound's going to be in the stereo space, the volume space, the EQ, getting the frequencies that are going to be in certain spaces together, that's where the fine tuning with the EQ is powerful.
And then just even listening to the whole thing on loop a few times and noticing that, because how it sounds in the mix from 0 to 30 seconds is going to be completely different than how it sounds in the mix from 3 minutes to 3 minutes 30 seconds, right? Like you may be playing, people may be more comfortable in hitting the drums harder or hitting the bass notes louder. Like, so listen through the whole thing. Once you've got the balance, listen for the loudest note for each of the different elements. So like the loudest bass note, and then we're going to mix the bass with that as the ceiling, right? And then we're going to listen for the loudest, kick in the kick drum. All of a sudden, you hear another one that's too loud at the very end, you mix for that one. And, you try to get things to that range. So you're not having anything spike on you, but you're getting to where you can hear everything, getting everything in its own little area. And then when you listen back, everything all of a sudden sounds so much more cohesive. And then there's the whole, a reverb to put everything in the same room, all that kind of
stuff. Gluing process. Yeah.
That's the whole other side of things. Well, this is getting things like from recording and getting a level on it, getting it to sound like the instrument it should sound like. And then, as you said, getting it in the right space if you're going to start digital panning at this point. But even if you have everything straight up at this point, getting everything to fit together where it should, make sure you're selecting the right parts and the right instrumentation so they're not competing and fighting.
Well, and taking some of these approaches in a standard fashion makes the gluing so much easier. Nowadays, I'm actually gluing the whole time just because the way I initially set things up, the gluing begins the moment a track comes in.
And one other important point about the everything being in its own space is if you have a band like the Grateful Dead, for example, where you've got, at different times, you might have 2 guitar players, 2 keyboard players, and 2 drummers in the same band, right? So the drummers are going to be, in the center, pretty much center, maybe one slightly off to the left, slightly off to the right. But now taking the 2 guitar players and having one offset to the left, one offset to the right, slightly in the stereo field. The keyboards, one slightly offset to the left, slightly offset to the right, not in the same place as the guitars. But if you imagine the stereo field and you're putting anywhere there's 2 instruments that are similar, one slightly this way, one slightly that way, then one slightly further this way, one slightly further that way. This gives you a spread where your ear can more easily pick them out, even if they do have the same, even if they occupy the same frequency range, because 2 guitars will and 2 keyboards will, even if they have different tone qualities, they might be in that same frequency range.
When you're talking the Dead, you might as well take one band, put them on the left side, take another band, put them on the right side. Okay, now play together.
But it makes such a difference when your ear is trying to pick everything out. Like if you have good headphones on and you're listening to a song that is panned out like that, or if you had, say, those 6 instruments and they are, 2 that are almost dead top, 2 that are out here, and 2 that are out to the sides a little further, you will really hear and be able to pick out the difference between those parts, and it'll help you to get the levels, compatible and have them feeling like they belong together. And then even if you put them closer back together, even if they're only slightly offset from the center, that's enough to let the ear pick them out a little bit more easily.
Yeah, and when you're wondering why you feel that way, check out the Cosmic Academy because they're explaining some of it.
Exactly.
I thought that was a cool one to kind of cover both the musical side and the psychology side.
Exactly.
No, flip me.
There you go. There he is.
Ooh, I got dizzy on that one.
I like the whole auto switching camera thing though. Go right from there to something else in a minute. Like, whoosh.
Yeah, I'm getting my laptop back hopefully this weekend.
Well, there you go.
Got a gig on Monday.
Nice. Good stuff.
Oh, and we'll be back Monday night with Wally. Some things cooking for Tuesday because it's not Wednesday. I'm still waiting to see what they're cooking there.
Nice.
Oh, and Airmos Dax, actually, part 1 of his new double EP. We're going to be doing that on Tuesday. And then
Very
Ange will be whipping it back out on Wednesday.
Yeah, and you know where to find us on Thursday.
Yeah. She throws the party. We get the hangover.
That's right. But sometimes we're at the party too, so it's okay.
I'm always there.
Exactly.
Right. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.
We cover digital, audio workstations and music tools. We explore theory, gear, and MIDI too. How to arrange, compose, and the art of arranging. Taking a look at AI and how the times have changed. On a PC or a Mac and even with a mobile device, we'll be talking about it all every Thursday night. From software to plugins and sets that entice. Dive deep into tech and let creativity take flight. Talkin IT. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. From bedroom producers to seasoned pros, we're breaking it down so knowledge grows. Whether you're a DJ or a beat making wizard, we got the tips and tricks to make your sound sizzle. Mixing and mastering, that's our jam. With the tutorials and tips on how much rev. Get the best quality from your setup and gear. Tune in every week and lend us your ear. We're talking IT. Come and join in and have some fun. It's highly educational with a lot to learn. We're talking